of the constraints that are designer related or contextual that we might run into in the middle of this partnership, or as we begin this partnership and work through the process, can be relationships. Some people are outgoing and bubbly and fun and love to collaborate, and some people are more introspective. In higher ed, you may run into personalities that perhaps are not as collaborative, or perhaps concerned about their content and their rights of their academic content. So building those relationships, that can be a constraint. That's something that really has to be worked at, but it's incredibly vital. You need to look at the restraints of campus, district, and federal requirements. There may be things that I want to do as a designer that my instructor wants to do as a faculty member that we are restricted by either campus, district, or federal guidelines from doing. Or there are things we may not want to do that we have to do because they are a requirement in one of those three levels. We may run into constraints with available technology, with required technology use, and also with the availability of technology to our end user, our students. And so we have to be cognizant of that, and that can be a constraint when we're designing together. The skill level of the instructor and the skill level of the students can be a constraint on what types of technology, on what types of skill level activities that we do within the content. And making sure that we're identifying and speaking to those levels is very important. We can also look at a few academic constraints. Predetermined learning outcomes that are set for you by the district. That could be a constraint if you're trying to change the way you're teaching a course, maybe from a linear model to a conceptual model, but you have predetermined learning outcomes written for you in your district syllabi that are based on the other model. Linear versus nonlinear structure, that can be a constraint based on what you teach. In some hard sciences and math, a linear approach works best because the previous knowledge it builds. And so a lot of instructors feel like linear is the best model. So there can be a constraint in the type of model. Lab integration. In this case, we're talking about a chemistry teacher, Dr. Chatterjee, and we have to integrate labs, and that can be a constraint on some of the things we want to do if we have to allow time and space for the lab integration. We have to, some of our biases, whether cultural, academic, or personal, could be a constraint. This is where some of that lecture is the best way to teach my content can come in. And we have to address some of those biases because they can cause some real designer-related constraints. Time is the universal constraint. How much time do we have? How much time is my instructor willing to invest? How much time are we asking of our students when we build these models, these courses? And then fear. Beyond a bias and into that area of fear where change can be scary, where making yourself vulnerable and putting yourself out there with a new model of instruction and sharing your material in new ways that are uncomfortable for you can be a real constraint when designing.